Welcome to this presentation on Introducing the Digital Preservation Storage Criteria, Standards Mapping Edition. I'm Nancy McGovern at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and my colleague Sibyl Schaefer at the University of California, San Diego is my co-author on this presentation today. We are both members of the Digital Preservation Storage Criteria Working Group, a small international team that's been working together on versions of the criteria since 2015. We'd like to tell you about some recent developments specifically focused on the standards mapping that we've been doing over the last year or two, and in addition to giving you some basic background on the criteria as they stand now. There is no definition of preservation storage for our community. It is, of course, storage that supports digital preservation, which, as defined by the Digital Preservation Coalition, is the series of managed activities necessary to ensure continued access to digital materials for as long as necessary. All of the digital preservation activities we engage in rely on storage, yet there are no community guidelines available to aid in storage selection, or there weren't until our group tried to fill that gap. You can see here some of the reasons for the rationale for creating and using the storage criteria. We want to make sure that as people kind of define their detailed requirements for preservation storage, that the criteria can help them do that. It is not in itself a request for proposal, but it helps to do those kind of activities for organizations. Every organization has its own situation to deal with. It helps an organization to identify gap areas in its existing preservation storage. It should help to evaluate and compare preservation storage solutions that might be possible for your institution. We also think that should help see discussions with IT about preservation storage to try to forge that partnership that's so essential with IT for engaging in digital preservation. Also to see discussions within the digital preservation field more broadly. We have engaged with groups at IPRES, the International Preservation Conference, every year, and we try to make sure that updates come out and then we get feedback from the community all over so that it isn't truly a community document. We also know that this can be used, that criteria can be used as a component of instructional material on digital preservation. This table presents an overview of the number of criteria and the introduction of categories for the criteria since 2015. In 2016, we produced version 1. At that point, there were 48 criteria, and we hadn't gotten to defining categories yet. That was part of the feedback we got from the community. In 2017, version 2 came out, and we were up to 58 criteria, and we had identified number of the 8 categories that I will tell you about next. Version 3, the current public version, came out in 2018. There are 61 and still 8 categories, though we'll be adjusting those more when we get to version 4, which we hope to come out by 2022, early in the year, if not sooner. Reviewing the categories will tell you a little bit more about the criteria. These are the current categories: content integrity, cost considerations, flexibility and resiliency, that in version 3 became flexibility, information security, which in version 4 is going to get separated out a little more as it's such a key area, scalability and performance, support, transparency, and storage location, which became resilience in version 3. You can see also the number of criteria in each of the categories and how that shifted, particularly if you look at flexibility. Those were shifted around into other categories in some instances, and there was some clarification of what that category would mean. And also, you can see the shift in storage location to resilience, where we increased but broadened the nature of the category that we were using for into resilience. By version 3 of the criteria, we had realized that a usage guide would be very helpful to people who are trying to figure out what to do with the digital preservation storage criteria. It requires context. It is grounded in digital preservation principles. And we also realized that some of the categories that are in the usage guide don't necessarily equate to criteria, but they really are important for having people figure out a holistic approach to digital preservation storage. So in the first version of the usage guide, we came up with categories on risk management, elements in establishing bit safety, independence between copies, and cost analysis. We have some additional categories that we've identified in and completing the standards mapping that I'll be telling you more about today. Version 4, which we'll be getting out as soon as we can, will include the standards mapping, some category shifts and some definitions, as well as some usage guide updates. So here's a list of the standards that we've been including in our standards mapping this year that will be for version 4. You'll recognize OAS, the Open Archival Information System Reference Model, and the second one on audit, ISO 16363, is its nickname often, but it's on the audit and certification of trustworthy digital repositories. We also looked at standards on production and preservation of digital audio, selection of digital storage media, electronically stored information, long-term preservation of electronic document-based information, and a series of security techniques standards from under information security. We're going to pause there for the standards mapping. We may do some additional ones, and I'll tell you a bit more about how we did the standards mapping. But what this does is to match we review the standards and then match it to specific criteria in version 3. We're using version 3 as we work towards creating version 4. So our standards mapping process included these steps. Working group members review and recommend additions and drops and revisions. We normally, one person takes the lead and we bring it to the group when we're ready for the review. Our working group discusses and records the results so that we identify new criteria, revised criteria, and things that might go into the revised usage guide. We are working towards incorporating the results to create version 4. As I mentioned, we're using version 3 of the criteria as a starting point. We'll be adding new sections of the usage guide to inform that will be informed by the mapping. We will continue our practice of seeking community feedback for version 4, the candidate version that will come out as soon as we can. And we will then incorporate the community feedback as we have done for the other versions of the criteria. I'd like to tell you a little bit more about the standards mapping results. At this point, it looks like we'll have about 12 new criteria. We'll have about 6 revised criteria, possibly a few that will go away and turn into new and revised criteria. In the new usage guide, we anticipate 3 to 4 sections, things like policies, organizational management, and more on managing digital objects and how that works in working with providers of digital preservation storage. We have a standards mapping grid that you will be able to see how the standards address each criterion in the set of criteria, and you'll be able to see synthesized results for each standard. Here is the first of 2 slides on a list of resources. First and most importantly, how to get to the criteria. We have a website on the Open Science Framework, and this is the link to it. It includes all of the documents that I've been talking about today. It will include version 4. It also includes the current version 3 and the 2 previous versions. We also are highlighting, we have a new article that came out in the IFLA journal. It's called Deciding How to Decide, Using the Digital Preservation Storage Criteria. And here's the link to that journal article. We also have an overview of the Digital Preservation Storage Criteria and Usage Guide, and that's from 2019. In this second slide on our resources, I'm repeating the website because it's so important. That's how you can get to us. That's how you can share your feedback if you have it. There you'll also see some use cases. There's some from MIT and how we have used it and some other organizations that will be of interest to you. We also have the storage criteria game, which is a great way to become more familiar with the criteria. Thank you for listening today. That's it for this presentation on leading up to version 4 of the Digital Preservation Storage Criteria, specifically focusing on our standards mapping. Thank you.